Hi, friends. I want to talk to you today about a what I think could be a controversial proposition, but I feel it's important to state it and kind of explain my thinking behind why I believe this. But I want to state to you today that America, as a country, as a nation, as a society, is profoundly is a profoundly good nation and society. I really believe that. Now, before you consider me to be somebody who's just caught up in patriotism or nationalism or something like that, I'm not talking about it from that standpoint. I mean something quite different. Now, I want you to hear me, just listen to me for a few minutes because I think it's really important for you personally, for your own life, and for the implications of the future that we're building together collectively. Okay, but before I talk about why I believe that America as a country is profoundly good, I need to talk to you about the evolution that I have went through in my understanding of the nature of humanity. Okay, so like most of you, a lot of people, well, when I was just growing up, I kind of formulated this opinion that there were good people in the world and there were bad people in the world. There were some evil people and there were some good people. And I didn't think too much of it. That's kind of more of a how I felt about humans as a child. But the more I grew, the more I became indoctrinated with a belief that all human beings were inherently evil and depraved at their nature. So the core of human beings was depraved, that they were bad, they were evil, and that human beings needed to. There was something fundamentally significant that needed to shift in the nature of humanity to make human beings tolerable in the world. That was how I believed, and that was reinforced through religious beliefs and training and that kind of thing. But then my view has evolved. Okay, so now let me tell you where my view is now. I am convinced that there are no evil people in the world. Yeah, I know, right? It's controversial. I am convinced that there are no evil people in the world. I'm convinced that all human beings, at the core of who they are profoundly, profoundly good. Yes. Now, do you know where I got that idea? You know where that started to germinate in me, where the seeds for that belief were planted in me? In a prison, in a state penitentiary. Let me tell you why. When I was a young adult, I got a job. This is right out of high school, and before I didn't go to college right out of high school. I ended up getting a job as a corrections officer in a state penitentiary, in a prison, and I worked in this prison for almost 5 years, and I learned a tremendous amount about human nature in that prison. Saw a lot of bad behavior. I saw human beings at their worst, and I became convinced, like the seeds for my belief now that human beings are profoundly good. The seeds for that belief were planted when I worked in that prison. Yeah. Sometimes people will say, how in the world did you work at a prison and come out after working there for almost 5 years convinced in the goodness of humanity? Let me tell you why, okay? Because I got a chance to really see a person, and I started to see that no matter what crime a person did, no matter how evil the behaviors, and there are, now, I want to say this, there are many behaviors and actions going on in the world today that are absolutely evil. Things going on at the highest levels of our government, things going on around the world that are profoundly evil. But I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about the behavior. And what I started to understand when I worked in that prison as a corrections officer is that behavior from a lot of these folks, well, all of the folks that were in there, what I started to see is that each person had a story, and their story was birthed and rooted in tremendous pain and trauma. Let me say that again. Their story they were living out had its roots in tremendous pain and trauma. Okay, but when you go back beyond the trauma and the pain, what I realized is that their roots were profoundly good. That these were people just like me. These were people who were profoundly loving at their core, that wanted just the same things that all of us wanted, that had the same needs and longings and desires that everybody else did. And at the core of their identity, they were profoundly good. Yeah, beyond the pain, beyond the pain, beyond the suffering, beyond the abuse, all the things that they were born into in a sense in the generational struggle. Those were the things that were affecting them, and the behavior that came from that was what was evil. But who they were at their core was profoundly good. And I saw so many folks in that prison understand that what they had done was not a reflection of them. It was a reflection of their pain and their trauma. And when they started to learn how to heal their pain and deal with their trauma, they could come back to their original good roots that were profoundly good. Does this make sense? I do this now. I'm a life coach, okay? So I do this for a living. I work with people, and one of my main goals is to help people reconnect to the truth of who they are at their core, which is profoundly good. And I've seen it time and time and time again, that the behavior and the actions of people elevate when they come back to the core of who they truly are, which is good. Okay, now let me talk about America for a moment, okay? I do believe that America is unique, is in a unique country in the world, and has a unique beauty and goodness at our core in a way that actually has been a blessing to the world and has helped the world elevate. Now, I could spend a lot of time talking about this, but I want to come back to this, our founding document, the Declaration of Independence. There is something profound in that document. I remember hearing speeches that were given by Martin Luther King Jr. during the Civil Rights Movement in the late 60s. One of his last speeches, I remember this line, and it's always like struck me when I've listened to it. And this line was, he said, I'm paraphrasing Martin Luther King Jr. He said, if I was born in the Soviet Union, Russia, China, I would have no qualms about freedom. I would have no qualms about it because they make no bones about it. They don't have the same core values at the core of their nations. But he goes, but I read somewhere that there were certain self-evident truths like life, that all human beings were created equal, and that human beings had a destiny of pursuing life, liberty, and the quest for happiness. That this was the core belief at the founding of our country, and he was profoundly moved by that all human beings come from a source, and that our dignity and essence as human beings come from this source, and that we were made literally as all equal manifestations of this source, which is profoundly good. That's what he was saying. And he hearkened back to that. And what was interesting is that our country made huge leaps forward because of the civil rights movement, but the civil rights movement was rooted in a founding truth that was stated by our founding fathers. Yes. So what is that truth? They made this statement, our founding fathers, in penning, Thomas Jefferson in particular, in penning the Declaration of Independence, said, we find these truths, and I love this next line, to be self-evident. Self-evident. That means truth is not dictated to you from the outside. There is no authority, king, government, entity outside of you that dictates truth. Truth, the nature of truth, is self-evident. That means it is evident within the self. This is a profound reality, and they were just stating it. And then one of the self-evident truths that we have at the core is that we all come from a source, and that source gives us dignity to be human, and that human dignity, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are profoundly good qualities. Now, at the time, the society was not unified in that understanding, and there was obviously horrific abuses going on in the sense of slavery. And then, of course, America as a nation has since went on to commit tremendous atrocities. Now, I could go on and on about that. I mean, I mean, even to this very day, the wars that we have created, the arms that we ship out to the world, that we literally have devastated the world with so many perpetual wars. I mean, a $700 billion a year Pentagon that is literally all that ingenuity going into war and killing. I mean, America has not lived up, by and large, to that founding principle, but we are moving forward. So the institution of slavery, profoundly evil institution, and then segregation, Jim Crow, all of these things. America has dealt with them, and you know why we're dealing with them. You know why the Civil War happened and slavery was eradicated. Do you know why the Civil Rights Movement happened? Do you know why we're moving forward as a country? You know why? Do you know why? It's an important question. The reason we're moving forward as a country is because we were founded as a nation on something that I believe to be very inspired, a profound truth. That truth is self-evident. It doesn't come from a government. It doesn't come from a decree. It doesn't come from any truth. That truth is self-evident. And then the self-evident truth is that we are all profoundly good and worthy of life and freedom, and to pursue the life that brings us the greatest amount of joy. This is a inspired truth that has kept us moving forward as a country. We haven't lived up to that ideal, but we are growing up into it because the roots are good. So I just want to say that because there is a belief today that I used to hold a religious belief that human beings were corrupt at their core. And there's also a similar belief today that America at its core, from its beginning, was corrupt. And I reject that. The people who wrote the words did not realize the inspired nature of the truth they were penning. They like all of us, needed to grow up into this truth. Just like all of us as people, I believe we are made in the image and likeness of God, but we are growing up in this life into that truth. It's part of the human journey of development. It doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you're evil. It means we have growing up to do. And as a nation, we are still growing up into the founding goodness, the roots of the founding goodness of what we were founded upon. Okay? That's what's happening today. You can be encouraged. We are growing up into the goodness of our roots. The roots are not the problem. The roots do not need to be overthrown. We actually just need to return to them. Yes. Now I could say more about this, but thank you for listening to this. If you'd like more information from me, I would encourage you to go to my website, jamaljavanji.com, scroll to the bottom, put your email address in there so you can get on my mailing list. Also, I have a Facebook group where I do live presentations on a regular basis. It's totally free and the content is very valuable. The name of that group is called Uprooting from the Poverty Mindset. You can do a search for that on Facebook, request to join, answer a few questions, and you'll be admitted to that. All right, thank you. Understand and feel your goodness today at the core of who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter what pain and injury that's been inflicted upon you or that you've inflicted upon others. Understand this, that at the root and the core of you, you are profoundly good, and understand that our nation is that way as well. All right. Until next time, thanks.